My name is Carlos Restrepo, and this is... Hi guys, welcome back to Classical Conditioning. This is episode 3, featuring the one and only Graham Betchart. Graham has spent over a decade training the minds of some of the NBA's most elite basketball talent. He has also mentally trained 3 consecutive #1 NBA draft picks in Ben Simmons, Karl Anthony Towns, and our boy from up north, Andrew Wiggins, as well as #3 NBA draft pick Jaylen Brown and #4 Aaron Gordon. He continues to collaborate with USA Basketball's U16 and U19 teams in order to instill a mental training program for the next generation of top performers. He's also the director of mental training for Lucid, a San Francisco-based company dedicated to helping athletes train their minds so that they can perform at the best of their capabilities on the world stage. On top of all that, he is the author of a book called Play Present, as well as the voice for the Lucid app, and a narrator/MC for Lucid Performance's CD entitled Unlock. Beyond this interview, I will also be doing a review of the book, the app, as well as the CD, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Hey, what up? What up, Carlos? How are you, man?
Good, man. I was currently suffering through some technical stuff, but glad things are kind of working out.
Technical stuff. There's always something going on, man. Always.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You know what? I just kind of wanted to shoot with a question. So a question I wanted to ask you was primarily about transitions. A lot of the times, I'm assuming you working with athletes, you've seen people transition from, middle school ball to high school ball to university. Yeah. And then all the way into, a professional league, rather it be in Europe or in the NBA. And I kind of wanted to ask you, how do you help your clients deal with those sort of transitions? Because in music, you have kind of the same thing as you go maybe from one school to another, or transitioning maybe from different work. So how do you help your athletes with those transitions?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things we work on is just accepting that it's going to be an uncomfortable experience. So instead of resisting that it's going to be uncomfortable, you kind of accept it. And if you think about like a rookie year, so if you're thinking about an athlete, anytime you're brand new at something like a rookie, it's always uncomfortable. So you're a rookie when you go to a new school, you're a rookie when you transition schools, you're a rookie when you go to become a pro. So to me, one of the keys is accepting this is part of life. This is what growth feels like, right? Or else we'd all be sitting home still in our cribs at our house, right?
Yep.
And never evolve. So growth is uncomfortable. If you can embrace the process, you don't have to be stressed out during it. If that makes sense, you don't have to be like totally overwhelmed. You just go, hey, it's uncomfortable. I feel vulnerable, but I know if I go through this is really good stuff because I'm going to grow, And so I kind of just paint that picture for them and give them that advice, and then I kind of walk it through with them. It's uncomfortable. None of us are hardwired to want to be uncomfortable. So the mindfulness comes in, and you have to open your mind and approach it and be curious. And once you tell yourself, hey, the back end of this is really good, then it helps them do it. Kind of like when you're lifting weights.
Yeah.
You're getting a burn in your muscle. Most people have interpreted that as a positive thing, even though it's uncomfortable. So if we can do that mentally, right? If we can do that in these places that require emotional intelligence, right? Where you're feeling emotions that's uncomfortable. But if you go, hey, this is what I'm growing. So, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but eventually it passes. Then you don't have as much stress. And that tends to help a lot. But Carlos, is it uncomfortable? Dude, yes,
Yeah.
it is. So there is no way to like transition to another level with it being like you didn't go through something, right? You didn't feel some feelings. It's part of it.
So we're hitting that victory to the vulnerable sort of vibe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So though, comfortable being uncomfortable, victory to the vulnerable, those are just expressions that kind of guide you on your way, and sometimes I'll use examples for food and I'll be like, did spinach taste amazing to you when you were young? And most people are like, not necessarily amazing. And then after a while, you realize what it does for you. And you're like, oh, wow, then it changes kind of how it tastes because I kind of like that taste because I know what it does for me. So new perspective after a while will help someone realize that when they're going through this transition time, it's a really good thing because that means you're growing.
Yeah.
And if you're growing, this is positive. As soon as you stop growing to me, oh no, like that's a challenge, right? That's when life actually, to me, is like, this is not going to be good. So if you have that perspective, it can help you kind of continuously grow. So when athletes go through it and they make it through one of those transitions, I say, just so you know, this is never going to stop. And hopefully in your life, you go through this many more times, right? Or else your mind's going to stay right where it is right now. And you don't want to be the same at 30 as you are in 20. You don't want to be the same at 40 as you are at 30. You want to evolve. You want to develop. You want to grow as a human. So these are like it's actually really important to go through these things.
Yeah.
It's really important to like learn how to go through this experience for sure. Because think about the people that refuse to grow and they refuse to avoid. I mean, they refuse to be vulnerable. It gets really bad for them. Like when people refuse to grow and develop, it's not like they're actually feeling a ton of pleasure. It's like things get really stressful and you're kind of stunted and you're kind of held back. So this process is important, whether you're an athlete, a musician, anyone, a student, it doesn't matter. Like anybody, we all have to go through this. And I'm 40 years old and I always tell myself, I'm like, man, I hope this never stops. I hope I keep growing. And part of me is like, oh God, it's going to suck. But the other part of me is like, yeah, but it's a good thing. So even me, right? I've been doing this work for 21 years. It's not like I'm just like magically like, yeah, I love it. I'm like, no, it's hard. It's hard, man, So it's part of the human experience though, for sure.
Yeah. Damn.
Does that make sense? Does that connect with you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool to always hear that. What is it called? That not every day is a smiles up, but I also think that means that you've done it enough, right? It's kind of like with practicing. I don't think every practice session is gonna be perfect, but we're practicing. And if we were just gonna practice on the days that we're great, we wouldn't be that great.
Yeah, and I was working with Aaron Gordon yesterday, and we were working on him, going through another breakthrough in his career and his life. And of course, it requires people to be, requires him to be uncomfortable and vulnerable. And as you're going through it, you have this initial reaction of, oh man, I don't know if I want to do it. And I was like, Aaron, look back, you've done this like 5 or 6 times. And he was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So then all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, this is going to be uncomfortable, but man, this is the right thing to do. Totally. So sometimes we just remember, hey, we've done this before. And a lot of times we don't remember being a little baby, but you've actually done this as a baby. I mean, you learned to walk and you fell down over and over again and it sucked, right? And you cried all the time. And right, so we've done this a lot, So if you can keep your mind open and kind of have what we call like a white belt mentality, where it's like, hey, I'm always learning, always growing. So it's never like I know it all. It's easier to just keeping that open mind. And one of the terms I'm working on now is called grease your grind. Mm-hmm. Basically, you hear the term grind all the time. And grind to me means you're working hard, but it also means you're resisting something because you're grinding. So you're kind of like, I'm working out, but I don't want to work out. So the other side of this is grease your grind, smooth it out. I mean, we all know we have to do the work. Why resist it? Just go right into it. We actually don't have to make these transitions as hard as we make them. It's the resistance of them that makes it really hard. So grease your grind, openly go into it, open yourself up and, be like, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to throw myself into it instead of like, I'm going to like fight into this space. After a while, you should be more skilled at this. Don't fight into it, like ease into it, right? And think of the term be like water. Yeah. Usually I'll like flow with it. This is here. It's going to happen. It's going to feel weird. So anyway, that's grease your grind. You don't need to resist all the stuff that's happening. You can just go right into it. Yeah.
I don't know if I could throw another one at you.
Keep going. We're rolling. Keep going, Carl.
Okay.
Keep going.
Well, something I wanted to talk to you is about the word compassion. So I think a lot of the times as classical musicians, you'll record tape a lot. And I'm assuming that's also like what athletes do. And then you sit back and you're watching yourself and you're looking at the music and
Yeah.
you're looking like, okay, did I hit this note at the right spot? Did I get this intention? And I think, what is it called? One of the biggest things I think I've been able to learn from you is this idea of compassion with yourself. You
Yeah.
know,
It takes so much courage. And an artist, a musician, an athlete, anyone that's performing, a surgeon, a trial lawyer, a teacher, I mean, it could be it's anybody, a mother giving birth. There's this moment where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen after this. Like I don't know. And I have to put myself out there and go through this experience. So I call it competitive compassion, where it's like, as a musician, you practice so many hours your entire life, like truly you care about it. You've made it into certain situations, right? You made it into schools. It's a competition. I mean, it is. And so there's a certain point where competitive compassion comes into play. And that means that you go, listen, I'm going to put myself out there. And this is terribly frightening. I mean, this is a basketball player taking a jump shot, a violinist trusting all their training. It's for anyone. And so that compassion for yourself, that compassion of like, look, I'm going to live with whatever happens. The most important thing is put it out there. That's where the compassion comes into play, because nobody knows what happens when you put it out there, Carlos. Nobody does. Nobody. That's what makes it so thrilling. That's what makes watching a great concert pianist thrilling. I mean, they're playing amazing, and you're like, oh my God, are they going to make mistakes? Like, it's so poetic what they're doing, and yet they're putting it out there, being vulnerable. And when someone goes into that vulnerable space and has compassion for themselves, it's like every human gravitates towards that. It's the most inspiring thing. To me, it's the highest level of like emotional intelligence and honestly like spiritual connection. And so I feel like having compassion for yourself will allow you to almost take a breath and go, oh my God, I have to put this out there. This is
yeah,
crazy, but I'm going to do it because I know it's the right thing and it feels totally vulnerable. But after I put it out, guess how I feel? Pretty good. And I feel proud. And it's terrifying putting it out there, but once you put it out there and you get the like, you're terrible, you're great, you're awful, you're awesome, and you go, wait a second, that didn't impact me as much as I thought it would. You go, wow, I'm so glad I put this out there.
yeah,
And then you learn when you put it out there, I can actually take people having opinions about me, and that's okay.
mm,
And that's because that's everyone's great fear. That's why they don't want to put it out there. And
yeah,
then you face your fear, and you're like, I'm so thankful I had compassion, because now I face my fear and realize it's not that big a deal. So
mm,
now you have a surge of real confidence that comes into you, knowing I'm okay, and being vulnerable is okay. And so what allows me to be vulnerable is this combination of like, you have to be competitive to do this. I mean, like competitive, like be courageous to put your stuff out there. And I use the word competitive because I like the warrior spirit. Like, I'm going to do this. Like, you've been working on whatever you play for so long, put it out there. And the compassionate part of your heart has to go, and that's a good thing. This is a good thing. And we're okay no matter what anyone says. And no matter what anyone says, you tell yourself, I love myself unconditionally. This is what I do. This is not who I am. So I'm going to put this out there. And when you put it out there in that vulnerable space, isn't that profound awareness right there, just doing that?
yeah,
Isn't that where all the breakthroughs happen? Isn't that where you get the aha moments and you realize, oh man, I can do so many more things now that I'm aware of compassion and being vulnerable, and it's okay. So, yeah, compassion has allowed me to go into all these spaces that are just fear, totally fear everywhere. And you go into them and you realize that fear was a feeling, but it wasn't necessarily factual at all with what was going to happen. And then after you go into it, what comes, Carlos? Freedom. Freedom comes after,
yeah,
right? This thing we're all looking for, freedom. To me, it comes after you go through these experiences, and then you become a higher level of emotional intelligence, and you're not just burdened by all your triggered emotions. And frankly, you're more mindful, right? You're more conscious, you're more aware. Do I still feel all those feelings all the time? I'm just a little more skilled at dealing with them now than maybe when I was 15,
yeah,
or 20 or even 30. Am I perfect? No way. That's why everyone calls it a practice. I practice being present, right? I practice compassion. I practice being courageous. These are everyday practices. Nobody's ever perfect, and it's a lifetime's work, right?
yeah,
There's no end game. There's no end game in this. There's no like, and then I'll get to this point and I'm done. Like, you're never done. Like one day we pass away and then you move on. But until then, we're going to work on this every single day. Man. So compassion will allow you to keep showing up. Kobe Bryant in his mid 30s had a quote where he's like, I wish I learned compassion at 18 or 19. I had no idea, because people think that word is soft, but little do they know it's the most That's why I say competitive compassion. Compassion is the most fiercest word I've ever heard, because it'll allow you to do things where instead of like avoiding, you do it. Great samurai warriors who were facing death, to me, had tremendous compassion. And so as an athlete or musician, for the most part, your life's not on the line when you go play music, right? I mean, let's be real. So once you can kind of process that, you're like, why would I operate from a life and death perspective then? Because my life's not on the line. So I'm going to do it. You're going to feel the fear of like, oh my God, I might die. I have athletes, everyone tells me that. I'm like, you're not going to die. It's not going to happen. Like, and then what happens is they actually start living after that. They start living because of, instead of avoiding that fear, the compassion allowed them to live. And then they get profound amounts of power and awareness after that because you've opened up to it. And that's a great mental workout right there, right? If we were in workout terms, that's a hell of a workout right there. Your ROI, your return on that's going to be monumental strength. You're doing big mental lifts, right? So you're like, I'm strong. Like as an artist or a musician, putting yourself out there, whew, that takes a lot. But as you put yourself out there, you get real strength.